We have to look at whether our governments are creating enemies so that they can justify what they do. Of course, two of the biggest funders of American presidential campaigns are the oil industry and the arms industry. And it's in their interests that we invade places like Iraq.
We're going to let the Israelis, or we're going to do it ourselves, attack the nuclear facilities in Iran. Now, people say, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. I agree. The problem is, folks, the people running our policy toward Iraq and Iran were widely known in the 1980s when I was briefing the Vice President and others as the crazies, okay? The crazies. You come in on Monday morning and somebody would say, guess what the crazies did late Friday night? And you'd know exactly who the reference was. It was to Wolfowitz, it was to Pearl. So all the same folks, some of them who deserted the sinking ship like proverbial rats, okay? But it was Feith, Wolfowitz, and the rest of them. They were the crazies.
There's a lot of other people that have a dissenting opinion about this war, and has another view of this war other than Cindy Sheehan, and other people have lost sons in this war and daughters. She needs to really go home and do this little protest some other way besides trying to make things sound like she's the only voice of America.
3 weeks later, this gentleman and many others got their wish. Free speech was banned for hundreds of square miles around Bush's Crawford Ranch. Now you can only protest on private property or designated free speech zones where no one can even see your protest.
Look, tourist stuff's popped up here now. Let freedom ring.
We decided to cap off our day in Crawford by traveling down the public highway to where the Secret Service had blocked off the public road 2 miles before the entrance to Bush's ranch. We were promptly told, as if America is now a third world police state, to get out of there, despite the fact that we were credentialed press.
You need to get back in your car and continue.
Really?
Yeah, you have to get off the road.
Oh, we're off the road. Okay. Or is it all right to stand over here?
Past your cars where you can stand.
Oh, but the barricades are here.
So let me get this straight. You believe that the U.S. government crashed those airplanes into the World Trade Center?
Yes, the evidence shows it.
You're full of Take a hike.
The whole point about 9/11 is that it gave a pretext for a preconceived plan. That plan is in the PNAC document, which precedes 9/11 by almost a year.
It became clear to us that the administration was using the corruption of intelligence to justify a war that need not happen.
In my opinion, when you look at the details of 9/11 and you read reports that there were planes that supposedly contained terrorists but did not take off that day, and that the Flight 93, for example, was supposed to be aimed at either Capitol Hill or the White House, you're in fact looking at a coup d'etat, that they wanted to destroy the infrastructure of American government.
There are a host of unanswered questions on all of this. The reason they're unanswered is because this president, this administration, will not answer the questions.
Why is it that perhaps the biggest question of all, why is it that on 9/11, 8:20 a.m., when it was undoubtedly without any question that one of those planes had been hijacked, between 8:20 and 9:38 when the Pentagon was hit, an hour and 20 minutes, no US airplane was put into the air.
There were drills on the day of 9/11 in which the American Defense Forces was supposed to be dealing with mock hijackings. Obviously, those would have slowed down the response of national defense to the hijacked airliners. If American passenger jets go off course and they are tackled by American fighter jets, the default position is to shoot them down. And yet in this case, of course, none of that happened.
There was the Andrew Air Force Base 10 miles from Washington. It has a squadron of F-16 fighters. None of those was put into the air. This is absolutely almost incredible. The most powerful military technological country in the world, albeit under a terrifying attack, was not able to put planes into the air, which actually could probably have stopped at least the second and third hits.
And we've got to ask why George Bush sat there with a group of school children for 16 minutes after he'd been alerted to a plane going into the second tower.
president's in Sarasota. He's told that the second plane has hit the World Trade Center. And the Secret Service guy immediately says, "We're out of here." The president stays for 30 minutes, folks, for 30 minutes. Now, how do you explain that? I've talked to all manner of Secret Service people. They say, "We're out of here" was exactly the right reaction. Everyone knew where the president was. If not the president, you might have had some concern for these little kids. Why did he stay for 30 minutes? Why was he countermanded?
The implication, of course, is he knew exactly what was going on, but he knew that he wasn't under attack.
I think all of this needs to be explained. It wasn't in the congressional report. There was no serious examination of this. And there is the amazing statement made in the official congressional report that the American authorities have not managed to trace the source of the funding. And then the most amazingly disingenuous statement, ultimately, is it of little consequence. It is of massive consequence. The head of Pakistani intelligence at the ISI, Lieutenant Mahmoud Ahmed, requested Omar Sheikh, who is a well-known Islamic extremist who is now actually in prison in Pakistan, to wire $100,000 to Mohammed Atta, who was the lead hijacker. It is absolutely astonishing that lead has never been followed up. As it happened, General Mahmoud was actually on a visit to the United States, both before and just after 9/11, and saw many leading government officials.
For people to dismiss these questioners as conspiratorial advocates or conspiratorial theorists, that's completely out of line, because the questions remain because the president, who should be able to answer them, will not.
We have plenty of evidence that the attack on Afghanistan was planned. Because after the negotiations with the Taliban broke down in the United States, I think they went to Houston in Texas in about July, and there were later discussions at about this time in Berlin, where US officials made absolutely clear to the Taliban representatives in this famous phrase, either we will provide you with a carpet of gold, in other words, if you supply a pipeline across Afghanistan, you ensure the security of the country, you guard that pipeline, then we can do a deal with you, otherwise we will bury you in a carpet of bombs.
In the years since 9/11, scores of highly regarded individuals have gone public to express their serious doubts about 9/11. These include former presidential advisor and CIA analyst Ray McGovern, the father of Reaganomics and former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, BYU physics professor Stephen Jones, former German Defense Minister Andres von Bülow, former MI5 officer David Shaler, former Blair cabinet member Michael Meacher, former chief economist for the Department of Labor during President George W. Bush's first term, Dr. Morgan Reynolds, and many more. Out of the countless prominent personalities questioning the official 9/11 fable, Gore Vidal, award-winning author and historian, has raised some of the most important points. You spoke about some of your questions concerning 9/11 and how your father had helped write some of the rules for intercept. Can you speak to your questions concerning 9/11, please?
Well, there was a big story about in the India Times, which is a very good newspaper, and it was about 9/11. And we had just found out, the world had found out, that Mohammed Atta, who was a Saudi Arabian guy, but seemingly working for Osama bin Laden, that he was in charge of the planes that crashed into the New York buildings. Well, the story is really more complicated. What struck me immediately, my father was director of air commerce under Franklin Roosevelt. My father, who was one of the original Army Air Force flyers in World War I, he had put in a lot of sort of safety things. In the event of a hijacking of a passenger liner or any plane that they knew about, that fighter planes would be scrambled, that is, sent up into air immediately within minutes, in order to force the plane down, to change course, shoot it down if you had to. And you don't need orders from the president, the vice president, or anybody else. That's the law. Well, they didn't go up after 9/11. Everybody knew what had happened. And the planes were still on their way to Washington